So, welcome everyone. We are here together. It's a pleasure for us from the National School of Public Administration in Brazil to receive this international team. We have representatives from Mexico, Germany, and Brazil together here to talk about the building public infrastructure for online participation construindo infraestrutura pública para participação online. And we are gathered here to learn and exchange. And if you need any assistance, we are here to give you, just put in the chat, and we are just following. And my name is Jana Macedo. I'm from the school team, and I will also be here to follow the activity with you all. So it's a pleasure for us, and I'd like to give floor to Professor Vaz to start the activity with us. Thank you so much and welcome again.
Thank you, Jenna. Good afternoon for the people that is in Europe, and good morning for people in Brazil or in Mexico also. Welcome to this webinar. This is the second one in our series, The Future of Online Participation in Smart Cities. I'm José Carlos Vaz. I'm the chair of the Brazil chair at the University of Münster and professor at University of São Paulo in Brazil. I will be the host for this session. This series is part of a bigger project from the Brazil chair that is ruled by the Brazil Center of the University of Münster and the Institute of Political Science of Münster, and supported by CAPES in Brazil. And the series brings together experts from academia, from civil society or government to explore some key issues that shapes the future of online participation, especially in the context of smart cities. As part of the scope research project, you can find more information about this project that focus on state capacity in enabling meaningful online participation in smart cities in our website. We can put this in the chat, the address. And we have on the initiative, we have some institutional partners beside the Brazilian ENAP, the National School of Public Administration, the International Digital Dialogues from the German Federal Ministry of Digital and Transport, and the Goethe Institute of São Paulo. This first seminars are part of the GIZ program for Urban October 2024, an initiative of UN Habitat that aims to promote more sustainable, inclusive, and just cities. Many thanks for everyone that made this seminar possible, especially our colleagues are here in the support team, from people from ENAP, from the National School of Public Administration, from our colleagues from the Brazil Center, that are here with us too, and Professor Norbert Kessing, that's the host in the Institute of Political Science in Münster. But let's start this. We have for this meeting the moderation of Fernanda Campagnucci. She is my colleague in the SCOPE project, and she has a very extensive experience as a practitioner in government, in civil society in this field, and has led many projects in technology and data. So Fernanda, please, it's up to you now. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Paz. Welcome, everyone. So before we move to the session and introduce our panelists, I would like to give a very brief introduction to the topic we are discussing today. We are departing from a broad question. What is the role of digital public infrastructures in developing more democratic smart cities? and what are the challenges that governments and society face when building and sustaining those kinds of infrastructures. So we can start by thinking about what a digital public infrastructure or a DPI really is. Well, like any other digital infrastructure, a DPI is made of hardware, software, data, but also social and political aspects such as rules, relationships, and interests. They are becoming more complex as other layers of emerging technologies are added to the top of them, such as artificial intelligence technologies, blockchain architectures, or Internet of Things devices, IoT. So DPIs are also becoming increasingly important for our democracies as they underpin the delivery of public services and information systems, and they centralize data about citizens and the cities. So in the field of participation, and now I get to our main point, DPIs can be critical in enabling processes such as voting, discussing ideas, deliberations, and also conducting public consultations. They can bring together people in co-creation processes. They can provide data for open innovation practices. And most of all, they need to have, most important of all, they need to have a democratic governance so that all stakeholders have a say in these functions. So I would like to close this brief introduction by highlighting three main questions that will guide the session. We may not be able to go deep in all of them, but hopefully they will spark some ideas and insights for you all today. So the first one, how do DPIs enable or enhance participation processes on the internet? And what are the challenges for sitting in implementing them? Second question, how can actors be involved in collaborative relationships in the provision of such infrastructures? And third, what capabilities should smart city governments mobilize to ensure the sustainability of collaborative initiatives in public infrastructure? So these are general questions. And I encourage you all that are watching us today in this live session to submit your questions in the chat, and we'll try to answer as many of them possible. Well, now, without further ado, I'd like to hand over to our first speaker, Alejandra Gonzalez, also known as Ali. She's the head of growth and community relations at Codeando, Mexico, with 10 years of experience in open government. She has also experience in working inside the government in Mexico City and is currently supporting government in open data strategies. She's also a member of the incredible Deciding community, and she is member of the Council of Multi-Ray for Digital Innovation. So, Ali, Alejandra, the floor is yours.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Fernanda. So yeah, I would like to share, and those are very, very good proving questions because now I know exactly what I want to show you. So back in 2019, I was tasked with implementing a participatory platform for the government of Mexico City, and I evaluated 11 platforms then, and I eventually chose Decidim for implementing in Mexico City. And afterwards, I have been very, very involved in the Decidim tool, the Decidim community. It has been, as a technologist, a very interesting experience to me because it cleared the way from how software for the public good should be done, and how we should in general ask for our governments to open their software. It just makes sense. Like to us, like a core principle that I would like to push is that if the software was built using public money, then the code should also be public. So I would like to throw some ideas about my experience with the Decidim, because right now I'm not only part of the Decidim organization, but I have implemented Decidim in other cities, and I want to speak specifically about how it was implemented in my home city, which I think it's a better example than Mexico City itself, and I want to show you why. So give me just a short moment so I can share some slides. It's not gonna be too much slides. Hopefully it's gonna be more like sharing some ideas, so not even consecutive slides. So a little bit about Decidim. Decidim, you should be able to see my screen now, but Decidim is a digital platform for citizen participation. So cities or countries, even actually the country of Brazil install Decidim for them, and they can run participatory processes with them. So why digital participation? This is the main idea. Like, we live in representative democracies where we vote for a representative and they make decisions for us. But somehow, at least in Latin America, I don't feel that's enough. Like, we need to be more involved in what happens in for example, in our neighborhoods, but in overall decisions from the government. So the Decidim was built for participatory democracy. So to get regular people involved, obviously not as a full-time job, but in specific moments where they can co-plan what happens in their cities, states, or countries, right? I came up with this term, digital public goods. If you do not know it, please search for it. It has blown my mind. What is it? Because coming from the tech space, we just build solutions and that's it. But a digital public good, it's a good that its intention is not just to be used by you, but by other cities and countries and etc. Let me see if there's a way yeah.
Ali, your mic is mute now.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so did you heard about the digital public goods thing?
Yeah, for just now when you
Okay.
changed the slide, yeah.
Okay, cool. So and this is why, because these are very conservative numbers. Oh, I hope I didn't have that. Very conservative numbers because we don't have a way to track everybody, but we have located at least 450 instances of Decidim running all throughout the 5 continents. And when I say 550 instances, they could be as small as just an instance for a neighborhood, or as big as the European Union or the country of Brazil. So in those instances, at least 3,003,000 participants. These are other like proposals that people do or meetings. But another thing I like is like it has been translated to 55 languages. And it has been translated by the community itself. So this is what makes it a public good. Like, you normally build a solution, it's just for yourself, right? Or it's just in English or just in your native language. But the Decidim has put forward like several systems of participation so that people can translate the Decidim itself. So 55 languages, personally, I feel that's a lot. So I want to speak a little bit more about the other question that Fernanda said, like specifically about governance. So an interesting thing about the Decidim is that it was, first of all, it was built by the municipality of Barcelona as a tool for them. But interestingly enough, the people who were in the original project, they had this vision of public goods before public goods was even a thing, right? So they built the Decidim to be agnostic and used by everybody instead of only being used by Barcelona, which is not an easy thing to do, to sell to a local government, even if you're an insider, because it means that it will cost more money to build a solution that is agnostic than a solution that is just for yourself. But they were in a good position and they built the CDIM agnostically for everybody. And in the longer term, it has been a very good decision. So the CDIM, like the Barcelona municipality, they used the CDIM, but eventually they donated the code to the Decidim Association so that the association could take care of the governance of the software. And what this means is that the Decidim is built upon democratic, I think I can use this slide. The Decidim is democratically stewarded. So that means the software in itself, like the new features, and the working groups, like how do we co-design the CDIM, how do we organize translation parties or bug bash parties, which we call, like whenever there's a new version, we get together and try to hack the CDIM to find if there are any bugs. So all of those things are done in community, and there's a formal structure in which you can become a member of the CDIM. Like you pay a very small fee yearly and that money of course goes to the project, and then you obtain voting rights. So any important decisions that need to be voted, like you obtain those rights by becoming a member. You can be elected, by the way, like I was elected as part of the coordination committee. There was an election that happens every 4 years. So I put forward a candidacy and people voted for me. So it's very interesting in the fact that the governance structure, it is very clear, like anybody can become a part of the project at any point, and you have very clear avenues on how to participate and become a steward of the solution, right? And it also uses Decidim itself. So there's an instance, it's called MetaDecidim, like I'm gonna put it here. MetaDecidim, it's basically just another Decidim installation. And on this installation, we have all of those discussions, like new features and translation parties and meetings and so on and so forth. And you can view the governance structure, like in itself. It has more explanations about how to become a member and things like that. And this becomes very, very important for a public good, because at the end, what's different is that we are building it collectively. But it needs to be fair, and it also needs to maintain the values. For instance, if somebody comes and tries to put forward an undemocratic feature to the software, like we have enough documents that guide how decisions should be made. Like actually, one of these slides is about the CDIM was built with several, well, this is more technical, but several principles like transparency, traceability, and integrity. So you could not put a feature that breaks one of these principles: equal opportunities, data confidentiality. So it is a very principled software. And for my last part of the intervention, I would like to speak a little bit more about the experiences implementing the CDIM. So like I said, I implemented the CDIM in Mexico City. But it was like I did the installation and it had about 45 processes. They were very interesting processes like the election of the missing persons secretariat, or the building of a new hospital. Like those were very, very interesting processes. But in my opinion, like the city was just not prepared to do a territory investment, although it was in the position to, but it just didn't. Like they relied on the tool being sufficient for people to participate, and the participation was, for the size of Mexico City, it was too low. So later, after I went out of the government, it was implemented in my home city, which is like, it's like 5 times smaller than Mexico City. My city is called Monterrey. And Monterrey is a very interesting city because it is not very politicized. Like there's not a political culture of people participating in anything. but they had this participatory budgeting. They have a participation law which contemplates participatory budgeting, but it was never done. It had never been done. So for the first time, like the new mayor was like, hey, let's do this budgeting, like participatory budgeting, a thing. I helped them implement the CDIM, and they made a very good, like, it wasn't a very strong investment. They had a small team of people who were tasked to be in the territory, like basically knock on doors, put on posters, and do like neighbors meetings to explain to regular people, like, there's a participatory process for you to put forward your own proposals that will impact like your neighborhood, and you also need to vote. So first of all, teach them they could participate for the first time ever, teach them how to build a good proposal, and then eventually help them in the voting process so that they can choose. And it, I have the numbers in my head. They purchased about 15 tablets, like just simple tablets, so that because at the end this is a digital tool, and they hired, like, the small team was I guess like 7 people, but they hired some other 30 people in a temporal contract so that they could go on all the neighborhoods in the city and speak about this participation. And it was a big success. Like every year they got more and more and more proposals and more votes. I can't recall the number exactly, but I believe in the last process there were about 16,000 participants. And to me, the best marker of success was that my own parents knew about this process. And I never told them that I was involved in the project at any moment, but I went to my city to visit them. I listened in the radio that somebody was talking on the news about, the participatory budgeting. And I asked my parents, like, have you done this? And they were like, yeah, of course. We organized with our neighbors so that we could all vote for the process within the neighborhood, that, for the proposal in the neighborhood. And to me, that was like, yeah, if you can get to a regular person without, I guess without doing a lot, then and you can change the participation culture, to me, that's the ultimate marker of success. And finally, I want to speak about offline infrastructures. Like there were billboards in Monterrey explaining about participatory budgeting, but I was just in Barcelona like this last week because we have our Decidim Fest. And this is the kind of thing you could find on the metro, like on the metro and on the street and everywhere. They have participatory budgeting every 4 years. And it looks like a Decidim software commercial, but no, this is actually Decidim. It's deciding in Catalan. And this is a big thing in Barcelona, like, and to me, that's why I think this is more like territory, people, culture, because you need to get, not just install the tool, but you need to get into the streets so that people know there's a participatory process in there. So to me, that would be the last takeaway. I hope I didn't take that much time, but hopefully you learned something from it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ali. That was really great. What's great about your presentation is that it's such a good example of public infrastructure, because it's not really owned by the government at all. It has another governance structure. And it's also great that you have both perspectives, someone that implements it as a public agent or someone working inside the government, and also as a participant in the community. So you may intervene or you may collaborate to improve the tools. They are needing some adjustment or improvement. We'll come back to that later. And I'll also like to say that Ali implemented with Open Knowledge Brazil when I was at the executive direction of the Open Knowledge in Brazil. She helped us implement a deciding instance for co-creation of open government legislation. So not only government, but also civil society can take advantage or can use this kind of infrastructure and collaborate with the community. So thank you so much, Ali. We'll come back later on to some questions and discussion. And now I'd like to hear from Professor Christian Kray. And Professor Kray is the head of the situated computing lab known as CityCon Lab at the Institute for Geoinformatics at the University of Münster. And he's the coordinator of the MSCA doctoral network Scala on spatial communication. And he was the scientific coordinator for the MSCA International Training Network, GUC, on enabling open cities. He holds a PhD in computer science. Professor, please go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, and thank you for inviting me. First speaker was already very interesting for me to see. I'm a researcher. I'm coming from academia, so I'm maybe reporting from that angle rather than from a very practical angle than Ali did. So maybe this is quite complementary. And what I would like to report on are two things that during my research in the past 10 years or so on smart cities have kind of emerged as important concepts in the context of smart cities in general and online participation in particular. So let me try to share my slides here. Just a second. Okay. Do you see something? I see a black screen.
We are seeing your presentation.
Okay.
It's working.
Let me try to make it so that I see my presentation as well. Are you still seeing it?
Yeah.
Excellent. So as you can see here, the two things I would like to talk about in a little bit more detail are openness and digital sovereignty as two concepts that I have found to be quite important and also quite complex in the context of smart cities and online participation. And rather than giving you a long list of results that we have obtained, I've structured this more as a kind of impulse for a later discussion. So I want to talk a little bit what I think I've learned in those projects, and then maybe outline some challenges that we could discuss afterwards. So if we start with the concept of openness, I think generally speaking, we already heard that in the first presentation. This is oftentimes considered to be very important if you want a democratic process of any type in a smart city. But the question is a little bit, what does it mean, or what does it entail? And as part of this larger research project, GUC, we looked at that in a little bit more detail, and we found, sort of coming at this more from a technological perspective, that there are potentially three areas where a smart city can be open. So one of them is of course, transparency. We already heard that, so that citizens, different actors in the city can actually see what's going on. So that these are things related to open government, open data, open source. We already heard that, so that's quite traditional, I would say. A second aspect, which again links more strongly to the topic today, but also strongly relates to openness in smart cities, is participation. So that the city is open to citizens to participate in various kinds of ways. So whether they form a community, whether they learn about things that are going on at the city, or even do something very actively like citizen science, this is all related to that. And then the third area that we thought is related to that is collaboration. so that, or heard about open innovation at the beginning, but that different parties can be involved, but also if you have different activities going on in the city, maybe using the same kind of open data, that they are in some way interoperable, so that you don't create sort of digital boundaries that are difficult to cross. And I think we found that if you manage to realize these three in some form or another, then the quality of participation that you can attain can be much higher. And we call this deeper participation, because it's not just simply voting yes or no, but there is a deeper engagement, and there's a deeper understanding of what's going on. There is more proactivity on the citizen side than in other cases. So this is kind of a short summary of some ideas we had. Question is, how can you operationalize that? And one thing that we prototyped in the GOC project was a so-called Open City Toolkit. So this is what you see here. It's maybe a little bit technical, but I'll try to explain it and show how this goes beyond basically just provide open data and some online services or voting mechanisms. So the basic idea is to have kind of an open operating system for a city that consists of mainly an open catalog that maintains a list of all the data sets that pertain to the city. It contains some guidelines that help people understand data, processes, services in the city, and then pointers to services and apps that are used in the context of a city. So this could be, I don't know, a complaint tool that you can use, or a fundamental service that does some aggregation on data and then allows you to build on top of that. So these services and apps, they would not necessarily reside in this catalog, but they would run somewhere else. But the catalog would basically provide a pointer to that, so that people who are interested can find out about these apps and services, and also learn about what kind of data sets, for example, they would use. And in the project, it's basically a website where you can search for different types of data, services, and apps, and then you get information about that. And there's a repository behind that hosts all this data. Then the services can take different forms. So this is one example that came out of this project. This is a tool that allows you to create campaigns. So a citizen initiative might decide, okay, we want to, for example, for a citizen budget, run a campaign where we ask people in a particular area about what they would like to do here. And with this tool, they can basically create an interactive mobile application and a website that asks that information, aggregates it, and presents it in a certain way. So this could be a service or an app that is included, that runs on the Open City Toolkit. Then the third component is something that is maybe less intuitive. These are interactive guidelines. One thing that we discovered is that due to the complexity of many things, it's sometimes hard for people really to understand what the words mean, what the concept means, how things are interacting, what kind of implications result from taking certain decisions. And the idea behind these guidelines is that they basically use the data sets provided in the catalog, and potentially also the apps and services, to explain to people in simple terms how things work. So for example, if you participate in the citizen science project and you collect local data, you're also sharing your own personal location with the system, and there might be some implications that come from that. And then the last and maybe most interesting component is what is named here the transparency module. So this is actually a special module that monitors all the accesses to data sets and also what kind of services and apps are available in the city. So it enables citizens to see which app and which service is using which kind of data set for what kind of purpose. And this is basically built into the infrastructure. So any app or services that's built on top of the Open City Toolkit can actually be inspected on a very deep level if you chose to do that. So that's an example of how this more complex and broader openness concept could be implemented in a smart city. So that's all I wanted to say about openness. The second factor I wanted to raise today and talk about a little bit more is digital sovereignty. And I suspect many people here in the meeting are familiar with this term, yet it's also quite a complex concept. So it can have different meanings in different contexts. So for example, there's this notion of an individual sovereignty, being able to basically pick your own path versus national or sovereignty, or the sovereignty of a city with respect to the decisions that they take. Digital sovereignty is also oftentimes understood with respect to the ownership of data and infrastructure, and that's also something that Ali talked about earlier on. But on a fundamental level, there are things like having the knowledge so that you can take decision, are part of this concept, having the means to execute your wishes and without harm to you, so to say, and also having the freedom, the right, and the will to act out your own decisions and carve your own path. These are all parts of digital sovereignty. So a very simple definition would be sovereignty in all its facets as it relates to the digital. I guess for online participation, that also plays a big role. And what we did is actually we looked at the different concepts that are there, and we thought about how can we map that to certain parts of a system that could be used for online participation, but maybe also for other things. And to very briefly summarize some ideas that we had there and then also implemented in a prototype, we basically thought that specifically being able to control what happens with your own data, who gets access to what data that you are sharing, are very important to have digital sovereignty. Having autonomy in your decisions is a second important part, and self-determination, basically having the knowledge that is needed in order to make informed decisions about things that are happening in the digital realm. These are three important concepts, and we then went about developing a software architecture to see how we can replicate that in an infrastructure. And what we basically thought is that there are certain things that are happening inside the software that a person does not see, but when a citizen interacts with the software, what they're interacting with is actually the user interface. So the buttons and the displays that they see, for example, and within those user interfaces, in order to realize these three aspects of digital sovereignty, what we thought we need are first standardized tools to control what's happening with your data so that you can easily pick across different services that you use what should happen with them. We need some transparency tools like the examples that I showed that make it easy to see what is happening inside the system. And then we also need learning facilities so that people of different skill levels and knowledge level can acquire the necessary knowledge to make an informed decision. And again, I can show you an example of how we implemented that. So this is basically a tool about location sharing. So this could be, again, something like citizen science or an app that people use to complain about certain issues in the city. And the 3 examples you see here are basically all part of the same app that tries to realize these aspects. So on the left-hand side, you see that all the location data that was collected is actually shown back to the user. Not only that, but we also show them some examples of what can be done with this data. So for example, we can infer where they live or where they work or which sites are important to them. So when they know that, then they can take more informed decisions. Second pane here, sorry, it's in German. This was a study conducted in Germany. This basically shows you how much time and when during the week you spend time at certain locations that were tracked as being frequented by you. Yeah, and that's again a simple view that allows people to see, oh, the data I'm sharing can actually be used to make inferences about myself. And last but not least, what you see on the right-hand side is basically a more fine-grained control panel for sharing location information, where you can say, okay, I want to only share location quality of a low quality or high quality, not in this area, not at this time, not at this location. So you have more control to do that. And that's some examples for how this can be realized in software. So I think in line of the positive view, showed some concepts and things that can be done to realize them, but there's still also some challenges, and maybe that's something that we can discuss later on. So if I look ahead, there is an inherent and increasing complexity that sort of pertains to online participation. And this pertains both to the actual topic. So if you think about urban planning, there are more and more regulations that pertain to that, and communicating that, understanding that, so that you can actually participate on eye level with experts is very tricky. And the same is true for the technology. So we already heard there's the Internet of Things, there are, I don't know, registration processes you have to go through, certain kinds of technology you have to use in order to participate. So there is this tension and challenge of overwhelming potential participants with all this complexity, and really making everything just simple is not really a solution, because that might withhold some important information that is needed to make truly informed decisions. And then my last point, and I guess it has to be raised at some point today, is the potential and issue of AI and generative AI technology in particular. I think there are very big implications that can come from that in terms of basically flooding participatory processes with generated content, in terms of creating very convincing disinformation and feeding that into the process, all the way to faking participants completely, automating the manipulation of participatory processes. And I think I'm not aware of any online participatory system that is really has developed a good solution to cope with that. And we're just at the very early stages where this will happen. So sorry for ending on a slightly gloomier note, but thanks a lot for listening. And these are some people that worked on these projects and some funding agency that I'm grateful for, so that we could do the research. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris, for giving us this deep dive into the concepts of openness and sovereignty. I think you showed us how the openness is critical to participation, and also we can think in these times where we're talking about companies like OpenAI, which is not really open. So the use of the concept and the distortions that are being made is also, it's always very important to come back to the concept, to the root of the concept, and discuss it. And also, and this topic of sovereignty is very related to what Ali told us before, because she talked about seeing this infrastructure as a common, as a digital common, and people that participate and that use, the users of the solution are also the developers, and so they can have this digital sovereignty more close to their experience. So thank you, and we'll also come to that last slide to go deeper on those challenges. I'd like to call Professor Vaz to also participate here and make some questions.
Okay, thank you, Fernanda, and thank you to Ali and to Christian for their very interesting presentations. And I have lots of questions that unfortunately I cannot present all of them, but I have two major questions to both of you. And they both are related to the question of how to create state capacities in our city governments for using, but not just for using, but for creating, developing, and maintaining this kind of public infrastructures for participation. So it's two not so simple questions that they look like, but the first one, uh, how to make, what kind of capacity we have to develop in our city government teams, in our bureaucracy, to having people that are able to work with this digital infrastructures in this sense of the using this a public good, and that can be not just used but have an appropriation from people, and how we can make these teams in government work on this. Is it possible just to hire people to do this as consultancies, and then as consultants, and then it's okay, we have to create a more internal capacity, and how to do this is the main question I have for both of you. But I have a second question, please, if you can talk to us about a little bit more, is in this issue of digital sovereignty. And what's the major challenge we have to make government officials and bureaucrats to adopt this idea as a real principle for creating infrastructures? It's a kind of knowledge, it's a kind of access of information, it's a kind of mindset, cognitive structure, mental structure for people. What's the challenge on this? It's sometimes it looks easier. You have to think about it. It's digital sovereignty. It's of course government has to think about sovereignty, but sometimes people, the officials, don't take care about this. So what's the point here, please?
And just to complement your question, already very complex, but Vani Borges from Belo Horizonte also talked in the chat about the power of big tech, and I think they may be influencing also this landscape of governments implementing solutions, especially with AI technologies now, and all the investment is needed for those kinds of structures.
I finished my questions, Fernanda. It's up to you.
Yeah, Christian or Ali, which one want to start?
Okay.
Okay.
I would say like the term digital public infrastructure and the term digital public goods are quite recent. And it is not easy to just convince any government official to do what, we still have very small cases. I talked about Barcelona, which is very small, but we also have a very big project called X-Road from the Norwegian Institute of Science and Technology, and it's governed like by 3 governmental bodies. And Europe is doing, I think, a great job by funding a lot of, they have a whole initiative about digital sovereignty, and they're starting to talk about open source public offices, that, this should be a policy that governments should have. But of course, trying to translate this to Latin America, wow, super difficult. But to me, it's a matter of, the people who are here, the people who are in this meeting as guests, like, we're all very important because we need to create the discourse. The discourse is not yet created, it's just still in the making. But we need to make it a thing. We need to make it a thing that, why is this important? Why it makes sense to me? It's obvious. Like, why is every government building the same solutions? And, because they are doing it with very small budget, they are not technically excellent solutions. So to me, the public goods and public infrastructure investment is just very obvious. Like, if we all agree on how good software should be, or if we start adopting good software instead of trying to build everything from scratch, it just makes financial sense for everybody. And it's also safer because those are solutions that, have long-term maintenance. And yeah, but a lot of that is just building upon that discourse and just talking about it without end, so that the message gets on to a regular public servant. So yeah.
Yeah, there's many questions. I wish I had good answers, and I think Ali is much more qualified to talk about the practical side of this. What I can say, having been involved in these projects and working with local city councils and being involved in some open data initiatives in various forms, I think there are several different answers that one could give. I think there are many challenges here. So I think many people do not care at all about digital sovereignty fundamentally. So when we ran a study, for example, with the location sharing, even if you show them that, okay, you share 3 or 4 data points and we can determine where you live, they don't care so much because they maybe don't see it as a negative. It's so convenient. Google knows now how I live, where I live, so it can give me all these very convenient advices. I think this concept of sovereignty, even though you would say it's fundamental to democracy, is not something that I feel is present in many people's mind, generally speaking, and certainly not with respect to the digital. I mean, what we have here in Europe is we have some really interesting legislation. So the GDPR, for example, it changed so many things on a technical level, yet on a practical level, few people make use of that. And the question is really, when would that happen? Would it ever happen? So do we need some big catastrophe where, I don't know, some cheating online service is breached and the data is shared with everyone? We had that and nothing happened. So I think that's one thing. On the other side, so on a more positive note, what I think is city councils are oftentimes overloaded and cash strapped. So they can't really usually they can't devote a lot of money to establish sort of some deeply thought out online participation infrastructure with the concept of digital sovereignty and some educational initiatives to go with it and whatnot. That's just beyond them, I think. what I observe a little bit is that it depends a lot on the individuals who joining the city council. So if you have some people that are really that come from this kind of scene where they basically have engaged with these concepts, then there are some inside elements that push for that, and that's how things slowly change. Though I think in many places we are at the stage where administration has now realized there needs to be some open data, and they are uploading PDFs to some government server, and that's the great extent of their openness and I don't know, participation efforts. So it's a tricky one.
Yeah. Yeah, and there is also a good question here from Danielle about the effectiveness of those initiatives. We'll get back to there, but before, I just saw Ali answer to Professor Kerstin about the question of the difference on console and deciding. But if you can talk a little bit more about that, Ali, you don't need to get into technical details, but it seems to me there is an important difference is about the community and the way it's governed. Can you tell us more about this difference between Decidim and Consul, which is another participatory framework, and also also open source as far as I know, but that can be used and is effectively used by many cities in the world.
Yeah, so very interestingly, I didn't know the Decidim back then when I had to install the participatory platform. My first choice was Consul because it was for other reasons, but it was popular in the Americas. There was an initiative funded, I think, by the Inter-American Development Bank to implement Consul instances in America via the GovLab in New York. So that I was familiar with Consul and I was comfortable with it. So my first choice was going to be just install Consul. But then somebody, by some random reason, gave me a Decidim, I guess, paper. I don't know how to call it, but just a little paper that said like this a participatory tool, blah blah, and that's where I chose to do the benchmarking of the 11 tools. Because yeah, why should I choose one tool over the other if I can do a benchmark? And I compared it to the legislation, like literally the participatory legislation of Mexico City, and made my choice via what I made my choice via several things, like what tool enables me to run all of the participatory democracy tools in the Mexico City law with the functionality that it has. Second of all, what tool is better maintained? Like, I do not want to use a tool that its last commit was 2 years ago. I want to use a tool that it is very active. So if you see the Decidim repository, like it normally has daily commits, like people are constantly working on it, and that to me was impressive. In Consul, it is active, but it had a period where it was a little bit not active, and so. And then maybe the final and most interesting, and I'm gonna use a slide for this, but it's gonna be very quick. Where is it? Desktop 2, yeah. Okay, so the architectural principle from Decidim that to me makes it superior to Consul is that you get to be your own designer for participatory processes. Like Consul is very opinionated on how you should carry on your processes, like participatory budgeting, and it has like stage 2, stage 3, etc. Decidim is very agnostic, sometimes too agnostic. Like it may be overwhelming to some people to use Decidim versus Consul. But basically it is like this, like Decidim has participatory spaces, these are the names, like maybe an assembly, which can be, I don't know, citizens assembly or a congress or whatever, or it can have a process or blah, 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 an initiative. And then it has a series of components. And these are basically Legos. So you can design your process by saying, okay, I'm going to build a participatory process or a citizens assembly, and I'm going to run the process in whatever number of stages I want, like 2 or 5 or 10 stages. I can do that in the software. And then I'm going to have, I don't know, 3 components, whichever I want on my participatory process. So on the first stage, I'm going to gather information through a survey, and then we're going to do debates, and then we're going to do meetings. So it basically allows me to build my own participatory processes. And that's why I personally liked it and still like it too. You know, it's very, very versatile, but surely it could be too versatile. Like, to me, like, final answer would be just go into both pages, look into whatever use case you have. Both of them have online demos, so you can go and play with your participatory process and with the tools, and then you can make a decision for your own self. I can say more about it. It's gonna get too technical. I placed a link with a more extensive explanation on the chat for you to see it. It's a comparison made by he's a philosopher with an expertise in technology. He may be biased because he has been part of the Decidim project, but you can see, like, it's just tables, comparison tables, so you can be more objective about it. Yeah.
Thank you, Ali. And I also think it's useful to share an ebook that has recently came out about all the Decidim philosophy and technical aspects and participatory aspects. And I think it also brings a fundamental question. I'll put the link here later, or the reference here. Yeah, thank you, Ali. And it also brings us to the question of Daniel. He was talking about all this way you have between the infrastructure and the public policy, right? How effective are this participatory process? So should we focus more on the infrastructure itself or in the results they bring? So I'll put this a little bit differently and ask you, how do you think these features, openness, digital sovereignty, and seeing infrastructure as a public good, does it help anyway to be more effective in the end? Does it help to get there more effectively, or these things are not related? And then Ali also told about the effort to go in Monterrey, to go to communities and to make this bridge between the infrastructure and people. So how do we get there? Is Professor Christian would like to start?
Yeah, I can say a little bit about it. Maybe again, I'm coming at this from a research perspective, so I'm not too experienced with the practical side. There's only been a few systems that were deployed, and based on the literature that I've read and the few deployments that we had, I think it's in a way it's an interacting system. So you have the communities and their needs and limitations, if you like, and then you have some sort of participatory technology. And whether or not this combination is successful or effective in a way depends on many factors. So I think in my personal experience, it might be as simple as timing. So this is new and interesting, so everyone participates, and then 2 weeks later, nobody uses it anymore. Or sometimes it's the case there is this really burning need for something, and then the most dreadful hack together platform comes around and is appropriated around so all the problems are worked around, and it's a big success. And then you have this highly developed, well thought out system that went through a user-centered design process for months and months and months, and then you find no one who wants to use it. So I've seen all of these, and I think the true answer is it's the combination of many factors, and I think there are some basic things that you can avoid, kind of like locking out certain people because of choices of technology and so on. But I don't think there is a guarantee or a particular playbook to be absolutely certain that a certain combination will be highly successful. But the others might disagree. That's just my little observation on a few smaller deployments.
Good. So for the other question was about the effort that cities need to make, right, to get to the regular citizen. So yeah, honestly, democracy, participatory democracy is not cheap. There's no other way around. You need to get into the streets and talk to people, and municipalities or countries or etc. might be put off of doing that, but honestly, I mean, I said it's not cheap, but in the governments I have worked, they always have a sort of governmental body that its job, it's citizen participation. So they are already in the streets. And when I was in Mexico City, we thought about the existing infrastructures that the city has. Like a city has, for instance, public parks or community centers. Like we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Like people already gather there and already see public spaces. And some cities, they already have places where they and money that they can spend for social communication. At least that's the way we call it in Mexico. But it's basically the poster you saw in my slides. Like they normally already have money and a means to print whatever, something like there's going to be a participatory process and place it on the street. And the tablets, honestly, it's not too big of an investment. Just think about Monterrey was 4 million people population, and the total tablets were 15, so not so much. But it does take effort. So that means, have people go into the streets, talk, and it's also a pedagogic process, like more than the process in itself of having like 2023 participatory budgeting. Well, that's important in itself, but the actual process of teaching people that they can participate, that is the most important aspect. Like for the first time, they are being asked for their opinion on a particular issue, and that will have an effect on their neighborhoods, and that is the most important part. And it builds, like you might say, it's just accessory, or at least some people or some politicians might think like, oh yeah, like accessory participation. But no, because it honestly builds a lot of trust in what the government is doing. Like, and it also it's also good for getting people to pay their taxes, because they're seeing like their taxes have an effect on something they are being asked about. So in Monterrey, we saw like the tax of owning, a home. They paid more because they associated that with the participatory budgeting process. So at the end, I think it's just convenient for everybody. It's just not politically a politically easy decision to make. Yeah. And sorry, somebody mentioned in the comments like Brazil has a participatory platform, and totally, like that is the CDIM, and we're very excited for the people of Brazil because they were very agile in implementing that. They are massive, and you guys are very you're very different from the rest of Latin America, because Brazil has like a culture of participation. It is mandatory for you to vote, but you also have like what do you say? Digital identity. So half of all of the CDM users worldwide are Brazilian, because you guys did such a very good job of registering people by having a digital identity. And it's not the same. Like in Monterrey, we need to some people don't even have an email. So, and in Brazil, people have their conta.gov.br. So I just think that's a very, very good practice. And that's what I want the rest of Latin America to look like. Yeah.
And this is also a good example of the interaction of different digital infrastructures, because the .gov.br is an infrastructure, is a digital public infrastructure made by the government to register all citizens and provide online services. But it's an infrastructure that can be shared to other municipalities and states, and also to enable participatory process such as the budgeting, the participatory budgeting, and the pluriannual planning we had last year. So yeah, this is a good example of how infrastructures can enable other processes. And I would also like to bring another topic to discussion, which is we are talking about digital infrastructure for participation. So infrastructures that enable participation, but we can also talk about participation in those infrastructures. And this is basically what Ali told us about the CDM, which is a tool, set of tools, and it's an infrastructure for participation, but people participate in co-creating that infrastructure. And also Professor Kray told us about the role of openness in providing the city, the open city toolkit, right? That provides access to data and access to services as something to enable other services. So how do you see that the need for people also having a role in co-creating not only infrastructure, but also data? Professor Kray also talked about citizen science, that people can collect data and also participate in the infrastructure somehow. So how do you view such kind of this kind of experiences?
If Ali, if you go first, I want to go first. I can go second. Okay. I think this kind of relates to what I had on my last slide in some way. I guess you could argue, since we are now living in the digital world to a large extent already, and more parts of our daily lives are connected to the digital world. Of course, this needs to be governed by democratic processes. And of course, all citizens need to have a say about that and be involved. And then there are several questions that come to my mind. I mean, if you think about really large infrastructures, for example, Facebook or TikTok, these are anything but that. They are actually quite the opposite of that. So they are driven by financial interests, by some companies. These are not governed by people. These are not democratic by any long shot, and yet they are the most used one. So we already have this dire situation in a way. And then if you talk about participation, this is where the complexity aspect comes into play. So who can really participate in what, and who wants to participate in what? So I think somebody who is not very who doesn't really care too much about technology is not likely to join the Decidim board to make decisions about whether you would run the software in Docker containers or whether you should switch from Rust to Python, for example. This is not something that they will be interested in. So the question is, how do you involve which person in what, and how do they really want to participate? So maybe I leave it at that, and Ali can respond.
All right, yeah, for sure. Like specifically the part about governing the CDIM, it's obviously for stakeholders interested in the CDIM, like, and that means people who are running a CDIM instance or who want to implement it, or whatever reason. Not obviously anybody can come in, but of course, like, why would they care? And maybe the lesson is any participatory dispositives and machinery processes should be catered to the interest of the people, right? So in case of looking at a city, in Mexico City, I remember we had a very good range of participatory processes. And of course, not all they were all open, but some were very technical, and of course they were catered to the technical people. For instance, like the realicitation of the shared biking system was super technical. So you could go in like a regular citizen there, but you would not understand anything. And some others are like, build a new hospital. So those are more like general interest. So that's one part, but I also want to talk about the citizen data aspect because that is also very interesting to me. But I'm gonna stop talking about the CDIM to talk about other projects. So here in Mexico, like a community realized that they didn't have data for the bus routes on their city, and that is actually very common in Mexico. Like most cities do not have a transit map. And that was a small team of 4 people, volunteers, by the way. So they created a project that it is still active. It's called Mapaton. I'll send you the link. But it's basically a mapping suite, a crowd mapping suite. So what happens is that, you make a small communication campaign in your city. People download the app and then they go about their daily lives, getting to a bus route and say like, I'm gonna map bus route number 23, right? You get into the bus and the application gathers the points and when the geographical points, and then you get outside of the bus and you said like, stop mapping. And after a month, you have a lot of data that we compile into we call GTFS, which is a specification for transit information, which is what actually facilitates what you see on your mapping services. Like if you go into Google or Apple Maps and ask the application, how do I get from point A to point B? And it tells you like, you should take bus route number, blah, 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 and it costs this much money, and there's a stop for this bus. That's a specification. So we do that with the data from Mapaton. And that's completely like citizen-made software and infrastructure. And we're still using that to build GTFS files for Mexico's several cities in Mexico that do not have a transit map. So that's just a use case, but there's plenty of cases that from citizen groups without the government, like we see a need and we're like, why don't we gather an info? And sometimes that information is just literally a Google form or a Frama form where you ask people. For instance, in Mexico City, we have earthquakes, and there were specific earthquakes that were smaller. And somebody put up a Google form, literally asking on Twitter, like, where did you experience this earthquake? And they eventually got to understand that there was a very, very small local failure. But that was a person that was a geologist. So he understood like something weird is going on. And to me, that's citizen data. And it's something that we can all do. And I don't know, it's just beautiful. And maybe to finish with one last note, in Codeando Mexico, we have an open data portal, which is built with SICAN, another open digital infrastructure. So on this portal, like it is 11 years old already, people can upload their data sets. So researchers, cities, or just regular citizens, they collect data and they upload the data and they reuse the data. So that to me is a very important and good practice. Like we should operate on data because at the end, we can draw very good insights or build products or build a number of things just by sharing data. And that's it.
Those are really nice examples. And I would say that, well, SICAN and these other examples you gave us as Decidin, they are all in the Digital Public Goods Initiative, Digital Public Goods Alliance register. So Renata Matsumoto just put a message in the chat, also commenting that this co-creation aspect is really a very interesting key aspect. And she asks if we know any other digital infrastructure that is being used to promote a specifically decent and sustainable work in global supply chains. I would say, Renata, if you don't know yet, to have a look at this registry, because they are linked. Each solution, each digital good is linked to the ODS, the objective of sustainable OSGs, actually in English, the objectives of sustainable development. So maybe there's one there, I don't know. And another key aspect, another interesting way to look at this question is, as Ellie was saying, that it's a way of increasing or strengthening the capacities of the state. Because if you have people participating on a process like that, you can have more data, you can have more inputs to a project. And just a final example, we also have in the GPGA registry, we have a platform in Brazil built by civil society, which is Querido Diário, our dear diary, which also we also have their interesting level of co-creation with developers, but not only technical people that can help with text, with design. And so it's also a good way of involving people in the development, not only code, but also other aspects of the tool. It's a question of digital literacy and data infrastructure literacy as well. So Vaz, do you want to make other comments or questions to a final round with Ali and Christian?
Christian, come on.
To raise some further questions or comments, but go ahead.
Go ahead, Christian, please.
Yeah, I had one further thought about what you were asking earlier about how to kickstart sustainable, open, participatory platforms that are picked up on and function in a way. And I think there's a couple of contributing factors that can help. So from a university perspective, if I may say so, what we are doing in projects that we are applying for, we are more and more, when we are applying for funding, we're asking also for funding that we can give to open source initiatives. So the most recent grant proposal I've submitted, for example, is about disinformation and identifying disinformation. We involve several open source organizations, for example, that work on OpenStreetMap. and we foresee a certain amount of money that actually goes into improving the back end of that system so that it becomes more robust against disinformation. So that in a way, we are not only creating software that can then sort of attach to successful open source projects, but also involve the community themselves and give them money to do meaningful things with that. It's of course limited because the projects are always short-term duration. But I think on a political level, what would be really good is to actually have a specific budget for creating an open infrastructure for the state in the widest sense. So you have a democracy, and the democracy needs to be independent, it needs to be sovereign, and it needs to be in control of its infrastructure. So having that, and I don't know exactly what form that would take, whether there would be, I don't know, at the national level, at the federal state level, at the community level, there would be, I don't know, software developers that would basically make sure that the infrastructure that various services of the state work on functions. And then there could still be a large open source community involved in sort of further developing that. But my experience is if you develop a system, even if it's used, it will fall apart if you don't have maintenance. So if that maintenance part could be basically covered by some, by the state, by the nation, whatever, then I think a big obstacle would be removed to move towards a truly open infrastructure, not just for online participation, but generally speaking. On that, I shut up and let you pick apart my argument.
No, I love to having you, Christian, as a counterpart, because you're speaking about the more, like the bigger ideas, and I'm speaking a lot about the very practical part. And honestly, if the big ideas are not there and part of the project will become like, it could become undemocratic very easily or lose sovereignty. So no, I cannot pick any of what you say apart, because to me, yeah, I can tell sovereignty is something we can lose very easily sight of, and we shouldn't. Like, this is important, and I don't know, I'm very thankful to have you as a counterpart. What I would like to end my note in is that every single person that is attending this webinar right now or in the future, like, I see you all as agents for change. I don't know your reasons for being here, but hopefully you have learned something and you have gotten motivated. And please reach us out. We're on Twitter and Instagram and whatever. And let's just become like a big global team fighting for sovereignty and digital public infrastructure and things like that, because this is not a question that is solved finally. Like, there's still so many open questions about how to make this sustainable, how to make this not lose its philosophical soul, how to make this scalable, etc. So many open questions, and we need so many people just speaking about this, working on this, and learning together. So to me, this is an invitation for you to let's just keep in touch, become a nerd, just as we are nerds of this topic. It is something that's very, very satisfactory. Me personally, I came into this because I saw the issues in my community, and I became so frustrated with, why are they not solved? And up to date, this is my biggest motivation, like getting annoyed by things that I know they could be better. So I invite you to follow the same. You can be actors of change for your community or for your country or, globally. And thank you very much for listening to us. Rand. Yeah.
Christian, do you also want to make some final remarks? Oh,
Oh, sorry, I didn't know that would happen. I fully embrace. I think Ali said everything that needed to be said. Thank you for the invitation, and I truly enjoyed talking to you all this afternoon.
Vaz, would you like to do some final remarks as well?
Oh, yes, yes. Thank you, Fernanda, for great moderation. And I'm really, really happy with this webinar we had. Thank you, Ali. Thank you, Christian. It was really wonderful. And I learned, if I can say, I learned that technology by itself is not enough to foster participation, but it's becoming more and more increasingly central on this. So we have to, first of all, make technology works and works very well and possesses strong features. The second, we cannot separate technology from its creation process. So it's essential to design and implement infrastructures with these principles you present to us today. So especially the participation, the digital sovereignty, we have to take this in mind. And the last point I learned from you is that we have to look at the digital infrastructures as systemic capacities, not just a piece of software that is in a local government, specific local government. They have to become more and more shared by government and society. This is very important. It's becoming more and more public, and as it becomes public, it's systemic capacity in the sense that it's not a capacity that a single local government or a federal government can hold. It's open. So thank you very much. It was really important for us, and I guess for all the participants in this webinar. So just before we wrap up, a quick reminder, this is the second one in a series of 5 webinars. We are promoting the series, The Future of Online Participation in Smart Cities. And we hope to see you at our next webinar. It's in November 11th. The focus is Participatory Smart Cities Modeling, because we have lots of initiatives on modeling the Twin Cities initiatives, the 3D modeling in the cities. So we have discussed this, what kind of initiative this, what kind of technologies is this, what the possibilities it opens to participation. Né? So please join us in November 11. You can find the directions here. Thank you, Kathy, for presenting this for us here, for the project and the series of the webinars. And if you came back to the YouTube to watch again, or to take special attention from some point where you need more information, and feel free to share the link with your colleagues and in your networks. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you for all the people that work hard to having this, for people from ENAP, people from the Brazil Center. And once again, thank you to Fernanda. I'm really happy to share this project with you. You are great, and thank you, everybody. And I wait to look you back to see you again in our future sessions. Thank you very much. And so we finish from here. Thank you again, Ali. Thank you, Christian. Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you.